Hi, this is Bro with the Dr. Vax channel, and this is the third of a three-part series on FreeCAD for beginners. If this is your first exposure to FreeCAD, you shouldn't start here. Look at the videos that are listed up above and watch those first. In this video, we're going to design a very practical print. This is a cable holder. It slides onto the side of my desk. This is simulating my desk here. Whoops, there we go. It's a nice tight fit, and the cable fits on here. And if you're like me, you have a whole bunch of these all over the place. So I needed a way to keep them handy, keep them close, but out of the way. So we're going to design this today in FreeCAD. Stay tuned, and let's learn something together. Now, as you're going to see today, there are many ways to design something in FreeCAD. In fact, there are many ways to design things in every computer-aided design program. And you've learned in the earlier videos that the key to computer-aided design is you take basic shapes and you add or subtract one from another. Now, when you look at this particular shape, you might think this is just a rectangle, but it's not, because this dimension here is narrower than this dimension here. Why? You saw that it was a little tight when I slipped it on. You don't want this to fall off, so you want it to pinch onto the desk. So we're going to create this with 3 sketches. We're going to make a sketch for this shape and extrude it. We're going to make a sketch for the block and extrude it. And then we're going to make a sketch to cut out the middle of each block and create a pocket. So let's turn to FreeCAD and get started. Okay, you'll see here that I'm on FreeCAD version 0.19. That's a pre-release version. I've spoken before about the various releases of FreeCAD. 0.18 is the production, the official version. So if we go here to a browser for a second, and we go to github.com FreeCAD/FreeCAD/releases, we'll see a page about the various releases. If we scroll down, we'll see the current production release. It says here latest release, and those are 0.18.4. However, here on the top, it lists a pre-release. If we click on that, then on the bottom, we'll see all the free release versions. FreeCAD is wonderful because it works on Linux, on Mac, and on Windows. And so we're using the 0.19 release. Let's go back now to FreeCAD, and we're going to start in our part design workbench. As you learned in the earlier videos, and if you haven't seen them already, you should watch those earlier videos first. A workbench is a collection of tools for a particular style of design. Just as a plumber would have different tools than an electrician, than a carpenter, those tools may overlap, but some of them are specialized. Workbenches may overlap, but they're specialized. In addition, the electrician can go into the plumber's bag to get something they need for a particular job. In FreeCAD, you can start in the part design workbench that we're using now, and you can use tools from one of the other workbenches for a specialized need. We're going to start in part design. I'm going to go File, New. I'm going to create a body. This is a body. A body is a part. These are 2 bodies. Part A, Part B, Body A, Body B. So we're going to create a body. You create a body by creating a sketch on a plane. We're going to use the XY plane. That's in essence the tabletop. Click OK. And now we're going to draw out this shape. Now, once again, I can't use a rectangle because it's really not. It's narrower here than here. And when you draw the shape, initially, you don't have to be precise at all because we're going to use constraints to pull that in. So we're going to select a polyline and just start drawing. So it looks something like this. And I'm using the left mouse button to lay down each of these points. And then over here, I'm going to go on top of this point, and I'm going to hover over that point until it turns white. then click on it. That will align those points. Now right click to release my tool. Now I need to constrain this to the proper dimensions and get all the lines just right. So the first thing I need to know is, how wide is this? Well, if I measure here, I'll see it's about 41. So I want this inside dimension from this point right here to this point right here to be 41. And we said we want the, I'm going to actually pull this line down a little bit here just to give us some room to work. We said we want the outside to be a little narrower. So I'm going to go from that point to that point, and let's say we're going to make it 40. We got an error. What's the error? It said it couldn't create this sketch because it has a conflicting constraint. Well, if we zoom in a little here and pull this down, you'll see these little dashes here. These are constraints. So FreeCAD is trying to be helpful when we produce a sketch. If we draw something that looks like a horizontal or vertical line, it's going to constrain it to horizontal or vertical. But in essence, in our case, that's going to create a problem because this isn't actually horizontal because this is wider than this. So these go down on an angle. So let me go ahead and highlight these various constraints, right click and say delete. I'm going to highlight this constraint, right click and say delete. I'm going to highlight this constraint, right click and say delete. And then I'm going to do the same here, right click and delete. Now I'll select this point and I'll select this point, and we'll say that this dimension is 40 instead of 41. And you can see that this is pulled down on an angle. So that looks good. Now, let's get these dimensions. We can click on a dimension and pull it out so we can see it. Let's see about how wide we want this to be. Well, this looks about right. It looks pretty good. So I made this basically square. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to go from this point to this point, and I'm going to make them horizontally also 41. And then I'm going to take this particular line and this particular line, and I'm going to make them equal. So we have this one and this one are equal. They're both 41. These points are movable, but let's make this point here vertical, this line or edge vertical. Let's make this line or edge vertical. And now they all sort of line up. Now we just need to get the 3 millimeters in here. So we're going to click this point and this point, and we're going to say that dimension is 3 millimeters. And then this point, there we go, this point and this point, and that dimension we will make 3 millimeters. And let's again move these around a little bit so we can see them. Now, we need to have some of these lines horizontal and the inside lines on an angle. So it'd be nice if these outside edges are horizontal and we just get a little thicker on the inside. So I'm going to take this line here and make that horizontal. I'm going to take this line here and make that horizontal. Now we're starting to come together. Now, if I pull on this, we can see this is pretty much constrained. It doesn't seem to want to move around at all. Except for this one right here. So let's fix that by saying from here to, not to that line, to that point is also 3 millimeters. There we go. So now I think everything is locked down, but we have to lock it in space. So we can lock it in space by saying from here to here to this particular axis is symmetric. So now it won't move up or down, but it will move side by side. Once again, let's move these out so we can see them. So now we have to find some way to lock it side by side. And we could take this point here and this point here, and this particular axis, and make that symmetric. Okay, so there's still 1 degree of the sketch is under constraints. So something is still movable. I can't move it up or down. I can't move it that way. Can't move those points. Can't move those points. So let's click here on this. Aha. So something on this line. Oh, that one is still movable. Okay, so the way I can fix that is I can say I want the angle to be just on one of these surfaces. So I'm going to make this surface here, I'm going to make that horizontal, and then since there's a dimension between here and here, that will fix everything in place. So now we have this outside shape. Now I just need to extrude it. I can extrude it up, extrude it down in order to create a 3-dimensional object. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to say pad. And there we go. Now I want this to be 120 millimeters. I say okay. And now let's drag this down and zoom out, and we can see our shape. There's a problem though. You know, maybe I didn't measure right. How do I know this is going to fit? Well, this one fits great, but I'll tell you a secret. This wasn't my first print. First, I printed some little ones just to see how well they fit. And you can see this one's not quite perfect. It doesn't fit perfectly. So how did I do that? Well, let's go back to our model. Let's double click on pad and make it 10 millimeters instead. Then I'm going to click on the body, go File, Export. Make sure I've selected STL down here, give it a name, click Save, and I created a little STL file that printed in about 12 minutes. So you can create a small version of the model in order to check sizes. Then when you're done, double click on pad and we'll make it 120. Okay, so we have this base. Now how do we create these? Well, we could do this a couple different ways. I could take and draw each one of these and extrude them up. But I'm going to do a little more creative way because I want to show you some other functions also. So let's take and rotate this around a little bit so I can see this surface here. And I'm going to click on this surface. To add a detail to a model, you create another sketch on a surface and then you model or extrude or pad or manipulate that surface. So we're going to go here and now we're drawing here on this model. I'm going to move that over a little just so it's a little easier to work with. And I'm going to draw a rectangle. There we go. Now, this rectangle is not constrained at all. So let's add some dimensions to it. Let's see, this looks about right. I did this with trial and error, but this ended up being about 13 or 14. So we'll take and we'll highlight this particular edge. And I'll go over here and I'll make that, well, this was 10. Let's make it 12. And I can go over here to this dimension line and I can move it out here so we can see it. And I'm going to highlight this edge here. And let's make that, oh, we'll make it a nice, easy, even 30 millimeters. We're good there. And now this is great, except it's not locked in place. So what I really want to do is I want to find the edge of this drawing. But the edges of this drawing are not accessible to me because they're on another drawing. So I need to map them into my space. The way you do that is you look here for this little icon that looks like a plunger on dynamite. And you go down to the edge that you want to map and you click on it. And you can see that now became available. Well, I'm also going to map this edge because we're going to need that one too. Whoops, there we go. So now these two edges are available to my drawing. So I can say I can go from this point to this point, and I can put a vertical distance, and we'll make that 10 millimeters. And once again, we'll drag that out so we can see it. And so that's going to constrain this so it can't move up or down, but it still can move side by side. Well, what I could do is I can just say side by side. And then I'm going to click on this axis, and I'm going to say it's symmetric. Whoops. I had too many things clicked here, so I'm going to click on this, and this axis, and say it's symmetric. So now that's locked in that direction, and it's locked in this direction, and I think we're all good, except now it says we're over constrained. So I'm going to click to select and update. Please remove at least one of the following constraints. So one of these I don't need anymore. So let's say we take this one and I delete it. Aha. So that's not what we want. That moved it down. So let's see. We're 10 millimeters from the bottom. The overall dimension is 20 millimeters, 30. So let me take this latest constraint that I added, and we'll do that a different way. So instead, let's take this point, or we'll take this one so we can see it, this point, and we'll put a horizontal constraint on it of 8 millimeters. We'll click OK. And now our model is properly constrained. Now, I'm not sure why that other option didn't work, but that's an important lesson for you. Constraints can get tricky how they interact with each other. So now that we have that all set up, I'm going to close this. So now that I'm on my main screen again, I'm done with the sketch. I can go back to my model. I'm going to select the sketch. So you'll see how it turned green here. I'm going to go to Tasks. I'm going to go to Pad. By default, it's padding to 10 millimeters. I actually want to make it 15. So now I'm going to click OK. And now we have the first one of these drawn. Now, I want 5 of them. So how do I do that? Well, let me select that and then go up here to these items here which create patterns. A linear pattern is in a straight line. A polar pattern is in a circle. So we're going to select linear pattern. Oops, it created one over there. I don't want it over there. But if I scroll down here, I'll see I can make it a vertical axis instead. It made it a little too far away. So let's pull this into 90 millimeters. That looks about right. Maybe even 85 would be, it looks not quite right, so we'll make it 90. And I want a total of 5 of them. So now that that pattern has been created, I can click on OK. And I can rotate this, and we'll see we now have the 5 clips, but they're solids. How do I make them so that they're hollow? Well, we do create another drawing. Click on that front surface. We're going to do this quickly. And now we're going to create another box. And let's right click. Let's move that up a little. And we're just going to do this by eye for right now. We could do this very precisely and finally constrain it. We're going to do it by eye. And the reason it extends over the ends is we want to cut out all the way to the end. So now I'm going to close this, and you'll notice that I didn't fully constrain that. That's a little sloppy, but we don't want the video to go too long. So now that's selected. If I pad it, I just get another object on top. But if I select it again, let's select that sketch, go to Task, and this time if I pocket it, you'll see that it cut it into the object, but it didn't go all the way down because I need to make it the same depth as our original box, 15. And now we can see that we have the first one of these. Well, how did we create additional items before? We used a pattern. So let's do the same thing. Let's go to this pocket and let's create a pattern. And you'll see it put the other pattern out here. You can see it there. Well, we don't want it there. Once again, we want it vertically. And we have to decide, it's way off here. We have to decide where we want it. Well, we made these 90 apart before with 5 of them. And now if I rotate around, you'll see these are all in place. So all I need to do is go back to the top and click OK. Now our part's pretty much complete, but there's one last thing we want to do. To be able to get this to slide on, I'd like to have a little bevel on these edges to make it just a little easier to slide on here. We still want it to hold, so there's no bevel inside, but we'll put a bevel on there. Well, a bevel in a CAD program is called a fillet or a chamfer. So we're going to go and take and rotate this around so I can see these edges. I'm going to select one of these edges. I'm going to select that edge there. And now we're going to go to tasks, and a chamfer, spelled C-H-A-M-F-E-R, chamfer, or chamfer, I don't know, somebody who knows better will tell me, is a angle. A fillet is a rounded surface. Well, I think for our case, we'll do a chamfer, and we'll make that 2 millimeters, and do an OK, and zoom in, and then pull that back here, and you can see here that we have a really nice little edge there. Now let's do the same thing on this other one. Let's select that edge, do a chamfer, make it 2 millimeters, OK. And now let's zoom out, and our model is ready to go. All we need to do is go to Model, select the body, do a File, Export, make sure we've selected STL, give it a name, and click Save, and we are ready to print. This particular model was printed on my Ultimate 2, my Monoprice Ultimate 2, in Matter Hacker Basic Build PLA in the blue, and I like that filament quite a bit. Well, folks, I hope this was helpful. The whole idea is that 3D printers are not just for printing toys. You can use them to print practical items. Now, could you buy something like this? Maybe. Would it fit your desk exactly? Maybe not. You might have to screw it in or something else. Well, in just a few minutes, and if I wasn't teaching this, once you're comfortable with something like FreeCAD, it's probably a half hour of work. Then you go away, you let it print for 3 hours, you come back that same day, you've solved your problem. Folks, if you learned something today, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll be notified about the next video. Share this with everyone you know. And as importantly, if you want to discuss this stuff with other people that watch these videos, go to forum.drvax.com. Thanks a lot, and let's continue to learn things together.